Okay, now we know how to style our text, we're going to see how we can align it. So this essentially means having it on the left of the page, the right of the page, in the middle, or justified, so spread out to fill the whole page. So let's take just our first paragraph and we'll get rid of the bold class because we're not going to be bold anymore. Well, not in terms of CSS anyway. There we go. So if I want this text aligned to the right of the page, then I simply do text align, and then you can see the options there. The one that I want this time, of course, is right. And very simple. That will align it to the right of the page. Or to be more precise, I should say it will align it to the right of the parent element. So this is the element which this is contained in. So the paragraph tag is currently contained within the body tag. So it aligns to the right of the body tag, which is essentially the right of the page. But if I put it inside, say, a div tag, and then I set that div tag to have, say, a width of maybe 300 pixels, and let's do a background color as well, just so we can see it really clearly, then you can see the text aligns to the right of the div because the paragraph tag is now contained within the div. So this alignment applies to the container element or the parent element. Okay, I'm just going to set a height for this div as well, so it's a little bit bigger, and then we can see what our text is doing. So that's our right aligned text. Left aligned is obviously standard. You can use text align is left if you want to, but it will be left by default anyway. So, quick challenge for you. Can you create another paragraph tag with some centered text in it? Go for it. All right. Hope you managed it. Let's have a class of centered, and I am going to spell it ER. Otherwise we get very confused because we have to use the correct or American spellings in our code. So let's have centered, and then very simply, as I hope you managed to figure out, text align center. There it is. This text is centered. Let's take a look. There it is. So the right aligned is obviously still right aligned, and that is then centered. Okay, so that's almost all we need to see, but I'd like to show you justified as well. Incidentally, one of my favorite TV programs as well, but not one of my favorite font spacings. I think it often looks pretty odd on websites if you have a really big chunk of text, but that's obviously up to you as the web designer. So to create justified text, we just use, as you might imagine, text align is, and then justify. Now, in order to see the difference here, we're probably going to need several copies of that sentence. And let's make it a little bit taller as well. Let's take a look. There we go. So you can see what's happened there is it stretched the text right to the edge of the page. And it does that by changing the letter and word spacing. So sometimes that might make your text look a little bit strange, especially if you've got some long words. So I'd use justified sparingly, but if you want to use it, that's how you do it. All right, so that's all we're going to see in terms of text alignment. But at this point, there is one more thing I want to show you. When you're creating a website for a client, quite often they won't have given you the copy for the website yet, and you'll need to put some website copy in there. Now, you don't generally want to put this text is justified repeated lots and lots of times because it doesn't look very natural and the client will be a bit confused. So you may have seen something called lorem ipsum. Now, if you really want to know the facts behind Lorem Ipsum, you can click that first link, but I'm going to jump straight to the generator, which is a really handy page for basically creating Latin text. I have no idea what that means. I don't really care. But what I can do is then just take that text and copy it into my page there. Let's get rid of the height so that it can change the height automatically, and then have a look. And now I've got a much more realistic idea of how that text is going to look, regardless of what text gets put in there eventually. So Lorem Ipsum has become the internet standard for generic text. If you want to see what your website's going to look like before you have the actual text, this will give you a pretty good idea. All right, so we're nearly there. Just one more video to go. We're going to look at links in a little bit more detail and those pseudo classes that we saw very briefly in the previous video. And then we're going to be on our big CSS challenge, recreating the BBC News website.